Let's see. Maybe. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. So my name is Ashley Edens, and I am the director for financial aid at Tusculum University. So we're going to talk a little bit about your options for paying for college. This, even though it says Tusculum University here, this is not a Tusculum University specific presentation. So all the information that is in here is going to be good no matter what school you're going to or what school that you might be looking at, okay? So if there was ever a more important slide than anything, it is going to be this one. If I could scream it from every rooftop in America, I think that I would. And that is that the FAFSA becomes available October 1st of this year. So the FAFSA that you are going to need as the senior is going to be the opening in October of your senior year. Okay, this is a very large change that happened about 5-6 years ago. And this is so you can help make your college decision sooner. So October 1st is the day it opens. I would suggest filling out that FAFSA application as soon as possible after October 1st, because that's going to allow you to get your financial aid award letters from schools sooner. It's going to help you make your decisions sooner, and it's going to help you meet some other deadlines that you'll need for state and federal aid later on down. The next bullet point here says FAFSA.gov. That is very important for a couple of reasons. One, being that you can either complete this online or you can actually complete it in an app now. So the app is Student Aid, and it's really actually kind of cool. At first, when the app first came out, I was like, really? Do we really need an app to do the FAFSA? However, it's pretty cool, not gonna lie. And the cool thing about the app is that the student and the parent don't have to be together at the same time to complete the FAFSA. So the student will log in and the parent can log in. And it's pretty cool because both people can be using it, can complete it at different times. So unfortunately, though, there are some scam sites out there, FAFSA.com being one of them, that will charge you to complete your FAFSA. And sadly enough, they will charge you to complete this, but then I will never get it, or another financial aid office will never actually get your FAFSA, which is terrible. But that's what scammers do. So FAFSA.gov is the website that you're going to want to use. And the F in FAFSA stands for free. So at any point, if anybody ever asks you for credit card or debit card information, run, because it's fake. Okay. A student and parent will need to create FSA IDs, and this is going to be a username and password to sign the FAFSA electronically. One thing with this too is that both student and parent are going to need an email address. Those do have to be two separate email addresses. So the student would need one and the parent would need one. And you're going to need, if your parents don't have an email address, I would suggest creating them a Gmail account or Yahoo or anything like any of those email providers, because you're going to need one. Something to consider as well, create a separate Gmail account for all of your school stuff. So all of your college applications, all of your FAFSAs, and make that something that you're going to use forever, because this FSA ID is something that you will use for your entire college career, but it's also going to be, crazy enough when we think about it, in 20 years from now, it's also going to be the FSA ID that you're going to use for your kids. So the FSA ID that you create as a student will be the same FSA ID that you use as a parent when your kids decide to go to school. So using your school email accounts that you currently have, I know most of the counties have given students a student email account. We would not suggest using that, because you're not going to have access to that email for much longer after you graduate. And then the student and the parent will submit the FAFSA using the IRS data retrieval tool, and you're going to be using 2019 tax information. If you don't want to transfer your data over from the IRS, you will need your 2019 taxes ready and available with you when you're filling out that FAFSA. Does anybody have questions on this slide before I continue? Because this, like I said, is the most important slide that I'm going to talk about today. Okay, I don't see any, so we'll move on. So the next couple of slides are going to show you kind of what your financial aid would look like at a community college. And then we're going to look at a private 4-year and a public 4-year, just so you understand the dollar amounts and what is available at each school. Because all of the aid programs are available at all of these schools, but the dollar amounts are different depending on which school you're at. So the first one we're going to look at is a community college. So the Pell Grant is a federal grant that is available for need-based students. And it's going to be based off what's called an EFC. So an EFC is what you're going to get when you fill out your FAFSA. You're going to go through there, fill out your FAFSA. At the end of it, you're going to get this confirmation page, and it's going to say EFC equals, and it'll be a 6-digit number, okay? Those range from anywhere from 0 to 990. I'm sorry, it's a 6-digit number. So 999,999. So 0 to 999,999. I have never seen an EFC that high. I have seen one extremely close, but never to the max. But we have a lot of our population receives a 0 EFC. So a 0 EFC is going to mean that you qualify for full need-based aid at all colleges and universities. So if you look here, that Pell Grant range is 0 to 5,576 EFC. This is based on 1920s EFC range, but a 0 EFC student would receive $3,097 per semester in Pell Grant. So a Pell Grant is going to be free money to you with no out-of-pocket expense. You're not having to pay that back, okay? So $3,097, you don't pay anything for it. No interest, no payments, no nothing, just free grant money. TSAA is what I like to call the state version of Pell. So it's a state grant that is eligible for Tennessee residents only. And it is going to be with a 0 EFC to a 2100 EFC. And you have to file your FAFSA by February 1st. Okay, so we said it opened October 1st, and you have to complete it by February 1st. So that gives you 4 months to complete your FAFSA application. At the community colleges, that TSAA grant is going to be $650 per semester. Then you have the Hope Scholarship. The Hope Scholarship is a 21 on your ACT or a 3.0 GPA. So 21 ACT or a 3.0 GPA. And at the community colleges, this is a typo, I'm really sorry. It is actually $1,500 per year at the community colleges. Okay, so $1,500 per year at the community colleges. Then you have Tennessee Promise, and I know everyone has heard all about Tennessee Promise, and it is going to be last dollar to offset tuition at the community college. That award amount is going to vary, and we have some slides later on to talk about Tennessee Promise and how to figure the dollar amount for Tennessee Promise. So this is what you would be eligible for at a community college. Now let's move to a 4-year public school. So the Pell Grant amount is going to stay the same. So Pell does not change from school type to school type. Pell is the one thing that does stay completely the same. So you're still looking at that 0 to 5,576 EFC range, and then you have the 3,097 semester max. And basically what happens, say you're not a 0 EFC, so you're not getting that $3,097. There's a sliding scale. So as the EFC goes up, the Pell Grant goes down. okay? But you're still going to be receiving some type of funding. TSAA stays the same as far as requirements, so a 0 to 2100 EFC, filing that FAFSA by February 1st, and it is $1,000 per semester. So $1,000 per semester at the four-year public schools. And then the Hope Scholarship is still the 21 ACT or a 3.0 GPA, and that is $1,750 per semester as a freshman and a sophomore, $2,250 per semester as a junior and senior. Okay. And then you move into the four-year private. And the main thing that changes here is the TSAA amount. So if you noticed before at the two-year public school, it was $1,000 per semester. Here at a private school, so a private school is going to be like Tusculum, Milligan, Carson-Newman, King. One of those schools, you're going to receive $2,000 per semester versus the $1,000 that you would receive at ETSU versus the $650 that you would receive at one of the community colleges. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes. Okay. So there are some add-on supplements that you can add to the Hope Scholarship. Okay, one of those is the General Assembly Merit Scholarship, otherwise known as GAMS. So to qualify for GAMS, you have to originally have Hope, and you would need to have a 29 on your ACT and a 3.75 GPA. Okay, so GAMS is for our high achieving students, and it is $500 per semester added on to your Hope Scholarship. Then when you look at the Aspire Award, this is for our need-based students. So it is parents AGI less than 36,000, and you qualify for the Hope Scholarship. So the $250 amount there is for your community colleges. The $750 amount is what you're going to receive at a four-year public or private school. You can receive one supplement or the other. You cannot receive both. If you qualify for both, which we have students that do all the time, we will always pay the Aspire Award because the dollar amount is greater. So by getting Aspire versus GAMS, you're getting $750 versus the $500 that you would have gotten with GAMS. Okay. So figure your Hope GPA from your high school. It can be different based on your high school's grading scale. Most high schools will have a Hope GPA on your transcript. I have seen that at a large majority of high schools recently. You will also should be able to tell based on your transcript if it's based on your unweighted GPA. So the unweighted GPA is going to take into account your AP classes and your dual enrollment are not going to count as high on your Hope GPA. Makes sense? But your school should be able to help you figure out exactly what your Hope GPA is going to be. As I said, a lot of schools actually have a way to figure your Hope GPA now. So moving on to Tennessee Promise and what your requirements are for that. So Tennessee Promise, as I mentioned, is a last dollar scholarship that is eligible at the community colleges. It is also available at the TCATs and several of the four-year schools. So Tusculum is one of those four-year schools that is Tennessee Promise eligible. Another one is Austin Peay. There are a couple more. Carson-Newman. And there are a couple more, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. So to qualify for Tennessee Promise, you're going to go to tennesseepromise.gov and complete the grant application by November 2nd. If you're a senior and you have not heard about Tennessee Promise yet at your high school, I would be very, very surprised. because most guidance counselors are harping on this, and this is one thing that they're really making sure that you've completed the application, and they're trying to get 100% Tennessee Promise participation with this. So you're going to go to tennesseepromise.gov to complete that application by November 2nd. I will say this is one program that they are very, very strict on the deadlines. If you miss it even by a day, you're going to be ineligible. So this is key to make sure that you are meeting these deadlines. So you're going to do your Tennessee Promise application by November 2nd, complete your 21-22 FAFSA by February 1st. You will attend your spring training. It's a mandatory meeting that they will do through Tennessee Achieves. That'll be done either at your high school or via Zoom. And that will be sometime in the spring. Those dates have not yet been set. And then you will complete your 8 hours of community service sometime between November 3rd and July 1st. You're also going to be assigned a Tennessee Promise mentor. And that mentor is going to help guide you in the process of what you need to do, when you need to do it, what you need to complete, and making sure that you've turned everything in on time and as you should. I have been a Tennessee Promise mentor for 4 years now, maybe 3. I will say I cannot get kids to interact with me. I don't know why. I can send them a text and say, hey, this is what you need to do. And it's like they read it and they don't respond. No different than my college kids, though. They don't listen to me either. So as a Tennessee Promise student, one thing that I encourage you to do is to use your mentor. That is what they are there for. When you are like, oh my gosh, it is November the 1st and I don't know what I'm doing, they're going to be able to help you in that process. They can help you complete a FAFSA. If they don't know the answer, they have all the tools to be able to reach out to the schools to say, what does this student need to do? How can I help them be successful? That is what they are there for. They're just an extra cheerleader along the way for you to help you find all the answers to questions that you might have. I would love to tell you that the college process is just, it's a simple checklist. Everything's going to be here and everything's going to be done. But that's just, I would be lying to you if I said that. You're going to run into things along the way that you need help with, that you're not sure about. Something that we're not even really covering in detail today, but will come up, is verification. What is that? Why does my school need a copy of my tax returns? And all of those things are stuff that your mentors can help you with. So make sure you're communicating with them and reaching out when you need help. Another point of contact while I'm on that note is going to be your school financial aid office. It is very critical that you answer emails when they send you an email or that you respond to them, because there are going to be things that they're going to need to be able to offer you financial aid. So Tusculum is a school that we do not purge. So if students have not turned in their fees, we do not kick them out of class. However, we're a rare exception to that. If you're enrolling at any of the state schools or any of the TCATs, if you have not completed your requirements for class and you do not have your bill paid on time, you will lose your spot in class. And we don't want to see that happen to anybody. So make sure that you're following through with all the requirements that the school sets out for you. That was just my little side note. So let's talk about Tennessee Promise and how it works. So on here you have examples A, B, and C, okay? Example A, tuition is $2,250. But that student qualifies for HOPE, Pell, and TSAA, and that total dollar amount equals $3,250 in financial aid. So if you take $2,250 minus $3,250, you will notice that that student doesn't have a gap. So there's no tuition left unpaid for this particular student. So the gap is 0, which means Tennessee Promise is going to pay 0, and your tuition is going to be 0. Okay. Now let's take this same example and say our parents got a great new job and now I no longer qualify for Pell and TSAA. So tuition is still $2,250, but I'm only going to have $1,750 in Hope because my Pell and TSAA is no longer there. So I'm going to have a gap of $500. But I've kept up with my Tennessee Promise hours, my community service hours, and I've remained eligible for the program. I'm going to get $500 covered by Tennessee Promise. So originally, student A in the first year didn't need Tennessee Promise. But in the second year, that same student needed Tennessee Promise because there was an income change. And so that student, because they had submitted 8 hours of community service every semester, was able to get that paid for. So just because you do not use Tennessee Promise your first year, do not just count it off and say, well, I don't need to do this. It's just 8 hours of community service. I'm not worrying about it. It is really important that you stay eligible for that. Another thing that we see happen sometimes is that students lose their Hope Scholarship after their first year because they didn't take studying seriously or didn't think they needed to study. And then Tennessee Promise is there to kind of help them out in that time because they've remained Tennessee Promise eligible, even though they aren't Hope eligible, because the requirements for those two programs are completely different. Now let's look at student B. So student B, tuition is $2,250, but they only qualify for $1,500 in Hope. So you see that the gap there is $750, and Tennessee Promise is going to pick up and pay the other that $750 and still leave a zero out-of-pocket balance for tuition. Okay, and then student C has full tuition of $2,250. Hope Scholarship, Pell, and TSAA, they didn't qualify for any of that. So the gap for that student is going to be $2,250, and Tennessee Promise is going to pay that difference of their tuition. Does that make sense about how Tennessee Promise works? I should also preface and say this is at the TCATs and the community colleges, and then I'll explain the funding formula for us separately. Just knock my mouse on the floor. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm scrolling through, looking at everybody's pictures. I can only see 4 of you at a time. I will say the very first person on my screen is Aaron, and he has been very entertaining to watch during this presentation. So Tennessee Promise at the 4-year schools works a little different. So as you know, our tuition is just slightly different than what tuition would be at a community college, okay? So while it is not free tuition at the 4-year schools, it is going to be the same dollar amount that you would receive in Tennessee Promise at a community college, okay? So as I mentioned before, this example is at a community college. So if you're student C, for example, and you're going to qualify for $2,250 at a community college because that's what your tuition rates are, you're going to qualify for that same $2,250 at Tusculum. Now, while our tuition is different, it does factor into our awarding philosophy so that it is a $2,250 scholarship. So you're not losing money by going to one of the 4-year schools. It is still only eligible for 2 years, and you do have to be enrolled in the General Studies Associate's Degree programs. Some of the other schools have other associate's degrees that aren't just general studies. Tusculum just went the route of a general degree so that everyone would qualify, and so that you can actually still be on path to a 4-year degree. So when you say you were to come to Tusculum and use your Tennessee Promise, you would be enrolled your first 2 years in an associate's of either arts or science and general studies, but you're still taking classes that would gear you towards your 4-year degree. So say you're taking, say you want to do business management. You're going to be in a general studies course, and you're going to be using your elective hours for general studies to go towards your business degree. So you're actually getting a step ahead, and you're just going to earn an extra credential in the process. Make sense? A little confusing. So like I mentioned, the way the dollar amount works, it's going to be the same dollar amount that you would receive, say you went to Walter State, Northeast State, one of those schools. We receive a memo from the state every year, basically, that says this is what the average tuition and fees are by credit hour, and then we use that chart to determine your eligibility for Tennessee Promise. Okay. Let's talk about federal aid, federal loans for a second. So we talked about Pell. That's the first form of a federal grant that you're eligible for. There are also things called a subsidized Stafford and an unsubsidized Stafford loan. Okay, a subsidized loan is not going to accrue interest while you're in school. The unsubsidized loan does accrue interest, but you're not going to be required to make payments on it until 6 months after you graduate on either of those loans. That 4.53 interest rate was the interest rate for last year. We did see a major drop in interest loan rates for this year. I don't know that it will continue to be that low. It is the lowest it has been in probably 10 or 12 years. And it's around a 2.5% interest rate. You would be very hard pressed to find a loan that would have a lower interest rate than what the sub and unsub interest rate is right now. So if when you're looking at college and you're looking at a school that you're going to need those loans, the very first one that you're going to want to take is that subsidized loan, because it's not going to accrue interest while you're in school. So when you borrow $3,500 as a freshman, when you graduate, you're still only going to owe $3,500. Okay, no interest will have accrued during that period of time. The unsubsidized loan will accrue interest while you're in school, but you're still not making payments on that. And then the third option that's out here is the Parent Plus loan. So the Parent Plus loan is a loan in your parent's name. Interest does accrue, and your parents have the options of starting payments while you're in school, or they can defer those payments until after you graduate. We encourage everyone to go ahead and start those payments, just so that interest isn't accruing on them, for 4 years while the student is in school, but that's not required. This is not a required, none of these loans are required. They're just optional loans as a form of how can I pay for this? So it's just options that you have depending on what school you're going to. I will let you know the community colleges, Northeast State and Walter State, do not participate in the student loan program. So loans would not be an option at either of those schools. And the Department of Education has put forth loan limits so that students do not overborrow while they're in school. So as a freshman, you have eligibility for $3,500 in subsidized loans and $2,000 in unsub, with a $5,500 max between the two. It does go up $1,000 your second year, and then it goes up another $1,000 the year following that, leaving your maximum amount per year at $7,500. This slide here, this is going to be Tusculum specific financial aid information. Okay, so this is the one slide that I have that really is just about Tusculum. I will let you know that this is probably very common with all other private four-year schools. Okay, so the dollar amounts may be a little different. The awarding philosophy will be different. This is when it becomes key to actually look and research your award letters and look and see exactly what you're going to qualify for at each school. Okay, so academic scholarships range from $1,000 to $20,000, and it's going to be based on your ACT, SAT scores, and your GPA. Those academic scholarships you keep for all 4 years; they never go away. And those, like I said, the academic scholarship is $1,000 to $20,000, and that is also super scored. So we're going to take your highest ACT and of each subject area. So your highest English, your highest math, your highest science, and English, science, math, and highest reading. And we're going to combine those together to come up with your highest ACT composite score. That's what we're going to base your your academic scholarship on. We also offer athletic scholarships for Division II, have scholarships in over 20 sports. That amount is going to vary by the coach. So that amount is 100% determined by your coach. They will work with the financial aid office to put together a scholarship package. So we'll take everything that you're eligible for and then add athletic onto that. And we also offer a need-based grant. That amount is going to vary. It's going to be determined by your EFC and other institutional aid. So it's kind of a last dollar scholarship that we put in there up to a certain dollar amount to help fill the gap for our need-based students. Something that I didn't put in here, but I think would be very beneficial to talk about is called the net price calculators. I don't know how familiar you all are with net price calculators, but they're really cool. Tusculum just recently changed our net price calculator. So in doing so, I went out to probably 30 schools to look at their net price calculators because I wanted to see what company they were using, what it looked like, what should we do, just doing research, comparing ours with other schools. There are some really cool net price calculators out there, and they are also extremely accurate. So as soon as you file your FAFSA, and even before, if you have a good idea as far as how much how much income your parents make, you can go to a school, search for their net price calculator. You can type in a little bit of academic information. So it's going to ask you for your ACT, SAT scores, and your GPA. And it's going to ask you for a little bit of income information. And then it's going to pop out a financial aid package for you. It's going to say, at this school, we estimate that your financial aid will be this. At this point, it's probably looking at 2021's packaging because no one will have set their tuition rates and their packaging rates for next year yet. But it would give you a pretty good indication as far as where you would fall with financial aid. One thing that I would mention here is don't count out a school based on cost before you actually research it. So one mistake that I made personally in my college going experience, I did not look at any schools other than I went to Northeast State as a community college and then transferred to ETSU. I never looked at any other option because I felt like I couldn't afford anything else. Didn't think I would qualify for enough financial aid anywhere. Not that I regret my college decision at all. I enjoyed both of those schools. But I feel like I didn't really give myself a good fair shake. I never visited college campuses. I didn't go through the process to actually see what I would qualify for. Now, working in financial aid 12 years later, I'm like, you could have went pretty much anywhere you wanted to go. And that thought never occurred to me, as a senior in high school. So I was a first generation student. My mom had no idea what we were doing, what we needed to look for, how we even needed to do it. All she knew was that, hey, I need your tax return so that I can do this application for school. So use those net price calculators. They're really, really cool, and they're very accurate. At first, I was kind of leery about them, and every school will have a net price calculator. It's a federal requirement by law that every school has one. So look at them, compare your numbers, reach out to any of your counselors for help to, help you complete that or to help you look at those. And don't count out a school just based on price until you know for sure that it's not an option. Just for example, at Tusculum, having that $20,000 scholarship could be a life changer for somebody who originally didn't think they could afford that. But if they qualify for a $20,000 scholarship, that completely changes the entire college going experience as far as qualifying for that type of scholarship. You're going to be able to see all those options on that net price calculator. Now the fun part. Does anybody have any questions for me? can't see all of you. So if you do.
I have a question, Ashley.
Okay.
Are there going to be any changes on the FAFSA this year? Have you seen like an
So
example?
they have yet to give us that information. It's kind of one of those things I'm like, really? We're the people that are going to be helping do this. Kind of would be helpful. But as of right now, we have not seen any major changes. They've changed some wording to some questions to hopefully make it a little less confusing, but no major changes that anybody has mentioned.
Okay, I have one more question that we seem to run into every year, and it kind of spooks students, and sometimes they end up not continuing on to college. The question I ask about if they're a foster child or are a ward of the court, and they have to prove that.
They can't prove that. Is that what you said?
They don't know how to prove it, and we say, well, get your court document from your custodial guardian, and sometimes the custodial guardian doesn't want to give that information.
Okay.
Can the student go get that somewhere in the court themselves?
Yes. So that should all be public record. And you should be able to go pick that up at the courthouse. If the student was ever in state custody, DCS can greatly help them with that.
Yeah, we've asked a DCS person before, and they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. So
really,
yes, they were very helpful.
We get them from DCS all the time.
Okay, it's their case manager, I guess.
Yeah, so basically we just need documentation to prove that they were in state's custody. We can even take a letter from DCS saying that they were in state's custody at some point.
Okay, what if it was just like a guardianship? There's a special
legal guardianship should be, they should be able to go to the courthouse to get those their public record.
What office is that?
Probably the county clerk's office, I would imagine.
Okay.
It's wherever you would pick up even like copies of divorce paperwork or anything else. I think it's the county clerk's office.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Well, for all of you counselors, we are always here anytime you get those questions that you're just like, what do I do? I don't know how to answer this. I will say some information is going to be different at each school. However, please feel free to reach out to me. I do have contacts at almost all the colleges in this area. So even if the frontline person that answers the phone is like, no, we can't do that, call me and let me figure out what exactly is going on, because sometimes that first person you get that answers the phone doesn't understand the full picture of what's going on.
Hey, I have a quick question too. Are you guys, I know obviously the situation is different this year, but are you going to do like a FAFSA frenzy or anything like that?
I don't know. Yes, I'm trying to rack my head around how to do that virtually.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, but it's so helpful. But
worst case, I mean, what we can always do is we can schedule appointments, easily schedule appointments. We can share screen, we can do it that way. My first initial thought was that we would do one and have everybody together and then have breakout rooms and then have everybody break out into individual rooms, sign up for a time. That was my first thought. We could do some drop-in events and then like we would have to let the person in the waiting room, that sort of thing. If anybody has any other thoughts about how I could do that, we will be more than happy to do whatever we can. It's just hard to wrap your brain around how to do a FAFSA like that.
Well, I'm not trying to speak for everybody else that's counselors in this room, but if you ever wanted to do something like that for TRIO students, I know we could get the word out and set it up. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like,
yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm sure everybody would. I know my kids would appreciate it. I have one of them in here who's Alicia. She's driving. But anyway, that might be helpful if, you know.
Yeah, let me wrap my head around how we can make that happen, and we'll be more than happy to facilitate that.
That'd be awesome.
And on one of our workshops that we were listening to over the summer, someone had done a drive-by FAFSA frenzy,
Oh,
where they did a tent up outside in the school parking lot after hours. And I don't know how they got electricity and all that stuff, but they did a drive-by.
we could totally do that. Let me think about that. The high schools also, I think, we're still trying to figure out how to make it work with the high schools because they're not really in school right now. Some are, some aren't. And that's a whole different picture. So yeah, let me reach out to some other people. I'm not sure, the state often hosts a lot of these events as well, and I'm not sure what they're looking to do. But I would be happy to facilitate something for us. Do you think we could get everyone to campus?
Again, I can't speak for everybody else because our students for math and science are, except for we have a couple of TOPS kids out of county, but all of our students are Greene County. But then regular Upper Bound has kids in Morristown and Unicoi, and so I don't know.
Okay, so I'm thinking we could easily use the main center lecture hall and spread everybody out. Let me think about that. Yes, I will plan something for sure.
Oh yeah, we tried the main center when we were looking at a place to do our ACT workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a whole list of things we had to do, like every 2 hours, everybody had to leave so they could clean the room, and it was a lot.
Okay.
Ins and outs, and so we decided not to do that right now.
Okay. Well, let me think through it, and like I said, I'll get back with you all. We can kind of brainstorm and figure out how to do it, but I need these kiddos to file a FAFSA, so I'll do whatever it has to take. If I have to put on a hazmat suit,